Liberty. It's such an interesting concept, isn't it? It is professed by those who are keen on taking it. Let me give you an example. We're told that our freedom is won by our military. And yet there is not a single example in the United States anyway of the U.S. military fighting for the freedom of Americans. And typically when the U.S. military is deployed, it is there to usurp the choices and freedoms of other countries. And we have it now poised off the coast of Venezuela to remove the previously elected government. We deposed the freely elected government of Ukraine so that we could use Ukrainians as cannon fodder to kill Russians. We chose to eliminate the Syrian government so that a terrorist entity could take control, and well, maybe then they would buy weapons from America as opposed to from the Russians. It's what we do. And so the military is the least free institution in the country. You have no freedom if you join the military. If you sign that agreement, you have to serve your term. You can't say, I don't like this job anymore, like you can in private practice, but you can't with the military. You can't show up, say one day, I just don't want to show up to work because, well, then you'll be prosecuted and put in jail. If a senior officer tells you to do something, you can't say, I think that's a bad idea. I'd rather do something else. You have no freedom. They tell you where to go, what to do, what to say, how to look, everything. There's no freedom. And in politics, it's a control mechanism. Religion is the same. That Paul would claim that you're free of the Torah and its laws in Christianity, but the Torah doesn't have any laws, and it doesn't even have a Hebrew word for obey. In fact, Yahowah, in the first statement he etched in stone, says, I'm your liberator. I'm the one that set you free from all of these forms of human oppression. And in Christianity, you're bound by what Paul say. And look how oppressive the church was. If you disagreed with the Roman Catholic Church while it was in charge of Europe, they tortured you to death. They executed some of the most heinous torture devices ever devised. Freedom, huh? Hardly. There is one source of freedom that matters. Yahowah offers it to us, and we're actually talking about it now because there is this myth within Judaism that because the Torah does not designate kosher laws are not established in the Torah. They're established in the Talmud and Rabbinic Judaism. That their argument is because God did not do an adequate job of explaining the kosher laws, the Talmud and Judaism were required because being kosher wasn't possible without their Talmud and their laws. Well, that's because God doesn't want you to be kosher. And you might say, well, but there's, look at Deuteronomy, with a horrible term, it's Dabarim, 14. It says, this is good for you to eat, that's not good for you to eat. What do you mean God doesn't want you to be kosher? It's one of the lessons that, for some reason, people can't get through their skulls. And it really all boils down to something that is very essential to the religious. They're all fixated on their bodies. That's why women have to cover up. Can't expose that body. That's why they're fixated on can't eat this, can't eat that. You can only eat this if it's blessed by the rabbi. It's always about the body. What is it about Christianity? Isn't it bodily resurrection? What an utterly absurd thing. But counterproductive even. But they're always concerned about their bodies. God isn't. He'll give you some advice regarding what's healthy or not healthy for your body. That's what Dabarim 14 is all about. But what matters is your soul. And what you eat has zero influence on your soul. So if you're fixated on your body, yeah, it might hang out. You might be able to hang with it for 60, 70, 80 years. Then it's going to die and it's going to turn to rot. If you were just a really good eater, your body's going to rot just as quickly as if you were a really crappy eater. The fact of the matter is, if your focus and attention is on your body and how it's adorned, what rules it follows, what you eat, then your soul is for naught. And if instead you aren't fixated on your body, but on your soul, and you pay attention to what God is offering to feed your soul and for the benefit of your soul, then, well, it's a whole different story, isn't it? And the profound insight that I was able to deduce comparing what is revealed in Dabarim 12 versus what is conveyed in Dabarim 14, just 2 chapters later, is that what you eat has absolutely no influence on your soul whatsoever. It only influences your body, which is not only decaying, but is replaceable. And that the reason there's only one moratorium in the Torah on what is an absolute do not do this is on consuming blood. It is to be spilled out on the earth as if it were water. And God explains why. He says, because blood is the life of the nephesh. But wait a minute, a nephesh is a soul. It doesn't drink. It can't eat. It can't consume something. It isn't a physical entity. So how in the world can not eating blood somehow equate to giving life to your nephesh? Because when it's poured out onto the earth as if it were water, it is capable of purging souls of their religious guilt, of the decay that causes death, and of that which precludes them from being seen in the presence of Yahowah. It is the bloodletting of the lamb on Pesach and of the bull on Teruah that prepares the soul for an ever never-ending length of days and eternity with Father and Son in Shamayim. That is the story that is being told here. And we got into this because there were 2 back-to-back assaults by the mother goddesses. And that first, when I've adroitly pointed out that Yahweh was bringing us back to Eden. That's the whole purpose of Sukkah, is he's transforming the entire earth on Teruah to be just like Eden on Sukkah, so that we re-enter the garden with our beloved King and Savior, and that we will live 1,000 years where we're all getting this second chance, a fresh start, if you will, to live with our God. And he has an opportunity to create the family he's always wanted. And when I mentioned that, well, there's some things that you need to know about Eden if you're going to be among those who enjoy Sukkah. And that one of those things is, oh, by the way, all they wore in Eden was a smile. And guess who just, oh, wow, I don't like that. Yeah, women that suffered from religious guilt, that were still all wrapped up because they were ashamed of their bodies. Probably the same women that suffered from anorexia and cutting and wanted to blame everyone but themselves for their problem, their animosity towards their own bodies. Yeah, that is the same cult that decided they would impugn Yada and YadaYahowah because they just hated the idea that God said that in Eden they were naked and unashamed, because they were very comfortable being exposed to God's presence because they weren't guilty. And that is what we should expect. Being totally comfortable, being completely exposed to Yahowah, and not being the least bit embarrassed because we know what has happened to our religious guilt. It's gone. It's been shed. It's been deposited in Sheol, never to be seen again. And that makes us overjoyed in God's presence without the need of any form of covering. Oh, they hated that, because that was all about exposing bodies. And then from there, they went into this idea that, we ought to be humble, which means a body that is bowed down, that is timid, that doesn't have any strength, not recognizing that God's intent with our souls is to make us like him. Bold, courageous, capable, empowered, the absolute obvious opposite of timid and humble. That's why he doesn't even have a word that would express humility, particularly in his presence. The only people that are humbled are those that have been opposed to his message. Same story. If you are confident in your soul's relationship with Yahowah and the benefits that he is providing, the empowerment and the guidance that he has given us, you're confident. If you're not, you're humbled and meek. It's all one story, isn't it? It's actually because they've gone 1, 2, 3, even with each of the three being disproven, it's called argumentum by distraction. It's a rational fallacy. It's what those who are lost and misleading do. Their whole world is ad hominem, non sequitur, and argumentum by distraction. One fallacy after another. But it appeals to people today because, well, they have forfeited thinking for believing. But it's essential that you understand, as I go through this and speak of the liberty that Yahowah is providing, that you need to know that is his intent. He's not a Lord, he's a father. That means he's not a mother, by the way, too. He is our Father. And as our Father, his goal is to enable us to be even more than we can imagine. I remember long ago, it goes back 10 years now, a decade. And this princess of a girl, her name was Zoli. She was my granddaughter. And I looked at how her mother and father were constantly imposing rules to hold her down, to control her. And this was this sweet and genuine, loving soul that had so much life in her. And I decided at that moment that I would manifest liberty for her. That whatever it was that she wanted to do, so long as it wasn't dangerous to her, we would explore. If she wanted to have tea parties and do dollies, that's what we would do. If it was to run in the wind, that's what we would do. If it was to dance in ballet, that's where we would go. If she wanted to play house, I would build her a house. And I did. No matter what. With every moment with her, I told her how wonderful she was and that the whole world was her opportunity. She could be whoever she wanted to be. Her response was to say something that she didn't say to anyone else. Papa, I love you. And that's exactly what we find Yahowah offering us. He gives us all the information we need to grow, to soar, to be so much more than what anyone has been before. And for that, I love him. Returning to where we left off on our last program on liberation, this says absolutely, truthfully and reliably, even immediately, just as that which is attractive and desirable, and that which is helpful, empowering, and edifying, is being enthusiastically consumed. So now, you may eat it, the clean and the unclean, together and alike, as if they were the same. It can be consistently and enthusiastically eaten. Dabarim words never should have been Deuteronomy 12:22. Got an argument with that? Do you think God made a mistake? You think that his intent were to say, nope, you must obey me. I am the Lord over you. I will determine the menu here. You will eat what I tell you to eat and nothing else. And you will like it, or I will send your sorry soul to hell. Is that your preference? Do you think you're going to earn God's respect by not eating a shrimp? You think your soul is going to be somehow influenced by having a baby back rib? Is that your take? Is your understanding of God that limited? Evidently, that is the case with many people. I've read their posts. The only exception, rock, the lone exclusion, is to be absolutely steadfast and certain, with a hard and fast rule, chazak. Chazak is the opposite of humble, timid, compromising, lowly, meek. It is firm, holding the line, powerful, committed, certain, hard-nosed. That you never, under any circumstance, consume the blood. This is because its blood represents the soul. And so you should not consume that which facilitates its consciousness along with the flesh. You should never consume it. As upon the earth, you should pour it out, just as if it were water. This is Dabarim words should never have been called Deuteronomy 12:23 and 24. It's the second time that God has brought this up. Blood. And the reasons I've already shared with you. Blood was shed twice, was it not? Throughout the Mikra, I mean, there's two really, really bloody sacrifices in the Mikra. Passover, where Dod's Bashar body is crucified. And he goes into great lengths talking about his body is so ripped to shreds by the Roman whips prior to crucifixion that he's not even recognizable as human anymore. And he goes over and over and talks about how his body is atrophying and it's drying up and it's suffocating with the agonizing pain of crucifixion, which pretty much tears up the, oh, by the way, Dode can't be the Messiah as the person who fulfilled Passover because there's no human sacrifice. Then what in the hell was he talking about in the 22nd Mizmor? It was his body that was ripped to shreds. It was his body that suffered that anguishing death. And he went through great detail graphically to explain exactly what his body would endure on behalf of Passover. You want to think it through? And what happens, and you're told, what are you told to do with the blood of that Passover lamb? Aren't you to smear it on the uprights in the horizontal beam of your doorway? And isn't it serving as a sign to the Malak to pass over that home so that you might live? Isn't that the purpose of it? Are you aware of what happens on Teruah, where the bull is bludgeoned to death? Blood everywhere. And then Elia is told explicitly how to prepare that sacrifice. Right there on the eastern side of the tent of the restoring witness, overlooking the Mount of Olives, when Yahweh says that he will release copious amounts of water and that he will ignite the fires, and there will be the greatest show on earth as the fire, the ash, the blood, and the water all serve to purify the souls of the remnant of the children of Israel that have been brought to Jerusalem, so that they can be restored and perfected, so they can enter the presence of Yahweh and Dod as they return on Kippurim. This is the message. It's God's story. You can accept it, you can reject it, but you can't alter it to suit your religious proclivities. Yes, this is because the blood represents the soul. That's what matters. That's why your body can eat whatever it wants, because it has no effect on your soul. The influence over your soul is based upon the blood that was shed on Pesach and will be shed on Teruah. Pour it out as if it were water. So it's the blood of the Passover lamb that is not consumed, but instead used as a sign on the doorway to life. God did not want us to miss the significance of its sacrifice or fail to appreciate its effect on our souls, or that the bodies of two men were fulfilling these Moed Mikre. But far more important, Yahweh is emphatically distinguishing between the body, Bashar, and the Nefesh, soul, because Pesach and Teruah sacrifices were both of the Bashar and not of the Nefesh. Just as the lamb and the bull serve as symbols for Dod and for Yada, their blood is symbolic of the life that they are providing through their death. But neither man perishes. Just the bodies representing these sacrificial victims of the thousands of profound and previously unheralded insights presented through YadaYahowah. This is among the most valuable. The blood shed was for your nefesh. What you eat is for your bashar. Dod's and Yada's fulfillments of Pesach and Teruah, as the El and the Adamah Parah, are the furthest things from human sacrifice. Their readily replaceable and restrictive Bashar bodies were gladly offered, as their nefesh souls were cherished for them having done so by Yah. Similarly, the blood on the doorpost and the wine as part of the festival feast is symbolic of offering one life for many. Such is the story reflected by the king's Bashar herald. And of course, with the second iteration of this admonition, never to drink blood, God has killed two religious myths. The Eucharist is wrong. And so is the book of Ezekiel that celebrates eating a man's flesh and drinking his blood. That is what Satan incarnate will do with mine as its sacrifice for you on Toruah. I would also like to suggest that just as Doeg's blood, as the Passover lamb, poured out of his wounds and upon the ground of Moriah 2,000 years ago, soon it will be Yadah's blood that will run off of Moriah as a cleansing balm during Toruah. One brought life, the other purification. And in the case of the Bashar observant bull, this Obed-Edom, his blood will be mixed with the water that Yahweh will release from inside the Temple Mount to wash away the residual guilt of the mortal remnant of Yisrael. So still speaking of never drinking blood and thereby denouncing Christianity and Ezekiel's Lord, we read, you should never consume it for the express purpose that it will be good for you, better for you, making you prosperous and successful, making you beautiful and cheerful, able to perform as needed, and for you and your children after you, in the end, as part of your remnant who remain. Did you know that God made this statement prophetic? He's saying that if you can remember not to consume the blood, not to be fooled by Satan and his representative on Toruah, who will bludgeon the Adamah Parah and then take his flesh and blood and eat and drink of them. If you have finally come to the realization that he is Satan incarnate and that you should not admire him, as so many Jews do now of Donald Trump, and you recognize him for the fraud that he is, and you do not follow his example, and you reject the book of Ezekiel, you reject Christianity, and you begin to listen to God, you'll recognize that this statement is prophetic. It will be good for you. And it will be good for your children, who in the end are part of that remnant that remains. Therefore, you act and engage, doing what is right in the eyes and the sight of Yahowah. If you want to be part of his family, act right. Stop being religious. Stop your belly aching. Stop your fixation on the body. Stop being worried about what you're eating or how you're dressed or whether you appear all bowed down and humble and timid, or if you stand up proud to be in a relationship with Yahowah. Get your attitude right. That's hard to do when you're hanging in the company, though, of revolting, psychotic liars, though, isn't it? By the way, I was asked by the king of cables, Rich, moments before this show, because he dragged me away from having a marvelous time. Drat you for doing that. To do this program, because I was in the midst of writing my analysis and commentary on what may be the most profoundly important song of our day. Now, that's a bit of an exaggeration because nothing beats the 89th Mizmor in explaining who Doeg is and God's relationship to our Messiah, the Son of God and our Savior. But the 35th Mizmor, oh my God. And it's hard to express in words just how overtly it exposes and condemns this mother goddess cult that has been so ruthless in trying to disparage me and to destroy YadaYahowah. In every possible way, it is ripped to shreds. And it's not only Doeg and Yahowah who renounce them. The very spirit that they've turned into mommy dispatches them to Sheol. It is, and it's an amazing experience. And it is part of Bashar Herald Coming Home 4, which this chapter on liberty is also enveloped into. And so it will be part of a series of ongoing programs. And it also feeds right into 2 Samuel 6, which is another ode to if you're right with God, you can be naked in his presence and you can party hardy. And that the woman who says, oh, that is shameful, well, God has an answer for them. But even more than that, that chapter in 2 Samuel 6 is an ode to the enduring relationship between two men, between one named Dod and the other one named Obed-Edom, and how they will work together in restoring the Ark of the Covenant to its rightful place. It is, well, there's so much that we have in store for us as we move forward. So why do you suppose? If you haven't thought this through, if it hasn't dawned on you yet that Yahweh would be so adamant that we never drink blood, was it because the risks to our health are extreme? And they are. The fact is, but if that was the case, he wouldn't equate it to our souls, now would he? You ever think a soul ever got the salmonella? A soul ever get hepatitis? Or is that those diseases for the body only? Could not therefore be as a result of the health risks to the soul, since he equated it only to the soul and not to the body. The fact is that we humans prefer our meat cooked, and therefore, for the most part, the pathogens that the little bit of blood that isn't drained out of the animal prior to, while it's being butchered and prepared for being cooked, is made safe. So we as humans, it's kind of interesting, because we prefer the taste and the texture of meat, and because those who cook their meat live longer than those who didn't because of the pathogens that cooking kills. Another ode to why God loves the metaphor of fires is the fact that the only humans that lived were the ones that cooked their meat over fires. We lost the immunity that other animals have that don't cook their meals over fires. Last time I checked, wolves don't say who's going to rub the sticks together and cook the goat that we just killed, or the deer. And so they have immunity to blood pathogens, where we humans have lost that immunity. So it's actually pretty toxic to our bodies to drink blood. So this is the realization that unlike other animals, we lost or maybe never even developed the ability to counter bacteria and pathogens in blood. So beyond the health concerns was God's moratorium, because this was the practice of pagan and later incorporated into Christian religions through the Eucharist, drinking blood, because it was very common. They would drink the blood of their enemies. Was this the reason? Or was there another lesson? One heralding the Bashar, since that last statement, of course, spoke of the final remnant whom the Bashar is responsible. Was Yahweh revealing that this final sacrifice would be so essential to their well-being of his people that they needed to be reminded of the importance of being set apart from the corruptive and deadly nature of religion, and that God spoke prophetically about what was to come, so they were prepared for it, that they wouldn't be fooled at this last date by the corporeal manifestation of Satan and the Coppercon, as revealed through Satan's playbook in Ezekiel? Was this the reason that Yahweh addressed their descendants and he referenced the final remnant who remain in the end? Is the sacrifice of the Bashar the means to make them right in the sight of Yahweh? Or why go from where they were to 3,450 years distant in time? Oh, my friends, to be Kodesh, set apart, we must be uncommon. And that means non-religious. It means apolitical. Apart from YadaYahowah, have you heard this message proclaimed anywhere else? For the benefit of the relationship and to reveal the way to enjoy life, they should choose to always be, without exception, set apart, such that you are uncommon. Asher, Rock, Kodesh. Kodesh is with a Q, not a K. It's not kosher. There is no R, Rosh, in the word. There's no Kof, K, and there's no Rosh. And it has a Daleth. Kodesh means to be set apart, means to be other than that which is common. And therefore, to be Kodesh is to not be religious, to not be political, to not be conspiratorial. Kosher means to be religious. So if you're guided by kosher laws, you are not Kodesh. They're opposites in this regard. Concerning yourself and your approach, your promise and binding oath should be respected and honored. It should be lifted up and borne so that you can arrive at, and be included within this site, this place to take a stand, which to reveal the way to receive the benefits of the relationship Yahweh has selected and prefers. He has chosen and continues to appreciate. Dabarim words should never have been called Deuteronomy 12:26. Yes, being set apart from the confounding intermixing of religion and politics in Babylon is the lone prerequisite to be part of the Bereth covenant. It is what we should choose to enjoy if we want to live our lives with God, doing so without exception or equivocation. We should not bow to the religious lore that celebrates humility, obedience, dressing such that every little inch of your body is covered up, mandating what foods you can and cannot eat. Yahweh's oath, well, his binding promise to us, is found in the Torah, Nabiim, and ours in response is in our vow to value the covenant and a relationship with him at the exclusion of religion and politics. And just as we can trust God, he expects us to be true to our word too. You can't go from one day claiming to be covenant and working to support the mission of Yahweh, the purpose of Yahweh, and this announcement to his people to bring them home, and then the next day try to tear all of that apart. Our commitment to and confidence in Yahweh should be lifted up and proclaimed, worn like a badge of distinction and honor. And as has been the case throughout this narrative, the one place that God's people can go to arrive at these conclusions at this time and be included as a part of Yahweh's covenant family is YadaYahowah. There is no other place. And that has been so for the past 24 years. There simply is no other. It cannot be found today in Israel. Can't couldn't have been found in Israel for much of the past 35 centuries, could it? Ever so briefly with Dode. Fleeting moments with Solomon. The blink of an eye with Hezekiah. But other than that, this is the first time that Yahweh's name has been reintroduced to God's people in 25 centuries. This is the first time that the Torah has been properly presented. It's the first time that the oldest witnesses to Yahweh's testimony have been held dear, have been expounded upon, have been amplified, have been presented accurately and completely. Where else would you go if the title of this is what you desired? And why would Yahweh speak of this preference for his name when this is the only place that his name has been for 25 centuries, if this wasn't his choice? The site Yahweh has chosen and prefers is YadaYahowah.com. It is there that we reveal the way to receive the benefits of this relationship, beginning by denouncing the religious and political adversaries and their deceptions, clearing away the muck so that the profound truth about Yahweh and his beloved son Dode, the conditions of the bereth and intent of the mikre, can be known, capitalized upon, enjoyed, shared. Now, a relationship is of no value unless both parties engage in benefit, such as the story of the bereth as told by the Bashar. Then you should act and engage, capitalizing upon the elevating offering, which helps you rise, of the Bashar, the body of the human herald, in addition to the blood on the sacrificial altar of Yahweh your God. So the blood of the sacrifice killed for you will be poured out upon the sacrificial altar of Yahweh your God, so that you may be continually nourished by it and by the Bashar, the body of the human herald. Dabarim words, Deuteronomy 12:27. Yes, in a teaching that was delivered 35 centuries ago, there is a prophecy for a day 8 years from now. God wants you to know that you should act upon what you're hearing. You should engage. You should capitalize upon this elevating offering that will soon be made by the Bashar, by the body of the human herald. Of course, in addition to the blood which is shed on the sacrificial altar of Yahweh your God. When Solomon got up and gave his speech about the Nakri, the observant foreigner, as I shared with you yesterday as we were in the Ocean studio, he did not need to define or describe the Nakri, this observant foreigner, because everyone there had heard of the Nakri previously. And this is because the Nakri is not introduced by Solomon. Not in year 3007, No. You see, the Nakri was introduced by Yahweh in the 29th chapter of Dabarim. And he specifically uses it as a title. It's Ha-Nakri. And he talks about how this observant foreigner would play a vital role in the survival of the final remnant of Yisrael in the last of days, purging them of their guilt. That is the story of this Bashar, also from the Torah. God began talking about his plan long, long before it would be implemented. And he wants you to know. You can oppose him. You can accept him. You can be nonplussed about him. Your choice. But you are without excuse. God has made it clear. And when I mentioned that Solomon gave the speech on the Temple Mount at the day that Yahweh's home for his name was completed, which not so coincidentally was the day that this Bashar will offer the sacrifice. It was on Teruah. He specifically climbed upon and stood in this altar. An altar that has two sets of horns, that of the ram and of the bull. And he stood in this altar because that is where this blood will be shed. The blood of the Bashar in the sacrificial altar of Yahweh. Because it's not the fact that it's blood. It's the fact that Yahweh knows how to use it and will use it in this case to purge the religious guilt of his people so that they're prepared for his return with Daud, for this new beginning and our return to Gan Eden. You see, it is the blood of that sacrifice that will be poured out for you on this sacrificial offering, with everyone gathered around being purged by the fire and the ash and the blood of the Bakar, this observant bull, on Teruah, an advance of Kippurim. Also that these Kipporeth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, can be anointed, and that all is good in the neighborhood, and that we celebrate forevermore with our God and his beloved Son. That's why it's poured out on the sacrificial altar of Yahweh. He's the one who transforms it. He's the one who makes it purging and cleansing. He's the one who knows that he can transform this into something that is nourishing for your soul, as it is provided by the Bashar, the body of the human herald, who is bringing this message to you. To be covenant, we must act. To be with God, we must engage. And a time will come when the surviving remnant will either capitalize upon the sacrifice of the Bashar, or they will die, along with the religious, the political, the conspiratorial, and the militant, all of the bloodsuckers among men. And in this case, you can do as the mommy goddesses have done and go from sponsoring the realization that Yada is this Bashar, this Bakor, this bull, the Adama Parah, the Choder, the Nakri. Or you can pretend that these titles, 100 some of them, and their presentation nearly 1,000 times is meaningless. It's no reason that Yahweh called him Ha-Nakri in the Torah, or had Daud's son Solomon speak of him during the Sermon on the Mount. You can negate it all. Or you can pretend that somebody else is going to come along. That just now, with 7 months remaining before the first phase of the two Shabuas, May 22nd of 2026 and June 11th of 2027, that somebody else is going to write 35 books entitled YadaYahowah. Someone else will recognize that, oh man, that really speaks of me. I'm the guy that is going to allow my body to be bludgeoned so that there's only one bone that remains unbroken. I'm going to be that bloody pulp. I can't wait to be torn to ribbons by the likes of Donald Dumpster and his henchmen. Sounds like real fun. I think what I want to do is I want to be exposed with a target on me for being the first person to recognize that Jesus is a myth, that he is nothing but a crude counterfeit of Dode, and that Dode is the actual Son of God, the returning King, the Messiah, the sacrificial lamb of Passover, the one who removed our guilt on matzah, the one who spoke in first person of what he would endure, and to be trashed by all manner of people and shunned and attacked, slandered for bringing that truth. Maybe you'll find somebody else that's going to stand up and say, that's what I want to do. And let's just pretend they do. You don't volunteer for this mission. And oh, by the way, it requires the 7 spirits of Yahowah to accomplish. And he has never handed them out to anyone else before, nor is there any indication he would hand them out to anyone else after. Do you know that on the most recent post by the mother goddesses trying to demean me, they have a chat box. Pretend that they are scrutinizing the claims that are made of the Choder, and the chat box says, oh, yeah, I don't want to read that sleepy stuff. It's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, too many words. I don't want to read that. But I'll approach this Choder claim by saying that, religious Jews say it's messianic. And of course, the Christians think it's must be their Jesus. So for Yada to claim it of himself, well, that's his own religious philosophy, that he is putting himself where he doesn't belong. So unable to think, unable to deal with amplified translations, which the chat box says can't be translations because they're unlike any other translations. So an amplified translation that is actually more complete and provides the means for you to verify all of the words, that can't be a translation. No, because it's not like the religious translations. And because there are thousands upon thousands of religious scholars that say, oh, it's Jesus Christ that it's talking about, or no, it's a messianic prophecy. And they're not smart enough to know there's no mention of a Messiah in the title. And Choder certainly isn't at the same standard as Messiah. It's not even the same standard of Shemach, which is the branch that Dode represents. The damn sucker. And yet, unable to think, they turn this over to a chat box who says, nope, can't be. And they revel in it. That's how far they have fallen. The fact is, the sacrifice of the Bakar as the Bashar, as Obed-Edom, as the Adam of Perah on Teruah. It will be the final bloodletting of the Moedim. And as the blood of the man representing the bull is poured out on the foundations of life upon the Temple Mount, 7 drops will be collected by Eliah and given to Dode to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant 7 times, ushering the return to the garden. on the 7th millennia of Yah's timeline. His body will die to bring you an extension of life. And so now and forevermore, your soul can be nourished by the herald, by Yada, by the testimony from Yahowah, found throughout the 25,000 pages of YadaYahowah, and through this Yahowah blog. Now, when I was directed to this narration from the Torah regarding what we should and should not eat this past week in response to those from the Mother Goddess cult denouncing YadaYahowah, literally trying to trash it on this basis, I, of course, did not expect to see what we have just read, but it's ubiquitous. Every time they choose a sword to fall, it thrusts right through their heart. Every time, without exception. And that is not only because I had skipped past the preceding verses and my review of this passage in the closing chapter of the opening volume of An Introduction to God long ago when I shared it. Because I translated it more than a decade ago. It's because I was not prepared to comprehend its implications until this moment. And I think that is why God asked me to move away from being a full-time writer who was a translator and commentator on his testimony to someone who spends their time mostly in the blog, either promoting the sites that convey the Yahowah blog or producing it. And now, of course, writing fresh and new text from it by translating and commenting on passages that we had not previously considered or that we're now reconsidering for a variety of purposes. Because then in this forum, the most recent insights, the sum total of all that we have learned and comprising all of these books throughout the years, 24 of them up to this point, can all be shared in the moment. That's why this is a live stream. God's very smart about the process, about the timing, about the means that he would use to convey all of these truths to you. And finally, we're prepared to know. And we're learning at an exponential pace. And we're conveying the truth as never before. So now I not only feel vindicated, as I have so many times in the past, and indeed appreciated, but even to some degree humbled, which is a rare experience in a life called to express confidence and courage. But I'm left to wonder if Dode also felt this way, as he envisioned and then described what he would endure on Pesach. You know, the part of the thought is that, God, what in the world did you see in me that would cause you to trust me to do this? I mean, you're asking a lot, and I'm delighted to give it, but what in the world did you see in me that you would trust me enough not only to do this, but to write about the fact that I would do it 35 years in advance? I mean, it makes you feel so small and yet so big. It's the most amazing out-of-body experience. You know, you're just one little person, and yet the role that you're being asked to play has such ramifications for all time. All because of what God does with it. So while we could linger here until the flock returns, we must move on to the next statement, where Moshe encourages Yisrael to closely examine and carefully consider this prophetic pronouncement from God. He says, remain focused. and choose to be observant. And listen to each and every one of the words. Shamar, Shama, Eth Kol Ha-Dabar. Wow. Which, to show the way to receive the benefits of the relationship, I am instructing you for your edification, for your education, to direct your thinking, because this response will be best for you and for your offspring after you, especially in the end, as part of your remnant who remain, as an restoring witness to the eternal testimony forevermore. Therefore, you should actually and consistently act upon and engage in that which is prosperous and pleasing, productive and beneficial, as well as right, straightforward, and on the level, upright and correct in the sight of Yahowah, your God. Dabarim words, Deuteronomy 12:28. There are very few things our God asks of his creation, but first and foremost, among his requests, is that we remain shamar, observant, and that we listen to him, eyes and ears, both plugged directly in to our brains. And this is so that we might know what he is offering and what he expects in return, and so that we can respond intelligently, and so that we do not react religiously, so that we don't have to go to a chat box and stop thinking. So you'll note that God wants us to feed our brain, not exercise our mouths with prayer, or flex our knees in worship. With every word of the Torah, we should celebrate them as music to our ears, as jewels to hold and enjoy. They are all there to lead to the benefits of the relationship that Yah intends through the covenant. In this way, the Torah has become our teacher and our guidance counselor. Therefore, our response, well, it awaits. By being shamar, observant, we will anticipate the arrival of the remnant and celebrate the sacrifice of the bashar, the body of the human herald. Others will be religious in their application of kosher laws and turn Yahweh into an intrusive and overbearing Lord. By Shama, listening, we will embrace our Heavenly Father as our God. Or by Babel, intermixing truth and lies, others will protest that they speak for their Asheri, their mother goddess. Therefore, I'm instructing you as Yahweh counseled us, doing so because an educated response will be better than an ignorant one. I'm sharing the Torah teaching so that this final remnant of Yisrael benefits from the restoring witness to the eternal testimony, Olam forevermore. And I am advocating on behalf of Yahweh because the Bakar, Bull, Bashar, Herald, and Ad witness, they're one, now and forever. Realizing this, you will either Ashah or not. Are you willing to act and engage in a manner which is Tov, pleasing to God, and beneficial for your soul? Is this what your nefesh desires? Is being Yashar, right with Yahweh, your priority? Or are you among the many who have and will continue to antagonize God while agonizing over all manner of minutia? Those who are Torah observant, those who listen to Yahowah, and those who act upon his guidance are productive and pleasing, on the level and right. But those who are misled, they're going to be eliminated. When Yahweh your God uproots and removes, cutting off, casting away, and banishing the people of different ethnicities, religious governments, and cultures apart from Israel, whom to receive the benefits of the relationship, you pursue there to remove and dispose of them, to dispossess them from your presence, displacing them. And then you settle within their land and remain. Be diligent and observant, choosing to closely examine and be contemplative so that you are not lured into their dominion and influence, being controlled, trapped, or ensnarled, following after them in the end as part of the remnant who remain. Once they have been destroyed, overturned, exterminated, and eliminated from your presence, unless you inquire about and seek after their gods, goddesses. How and in what ways did these Gentiles labor on behalf of and strive to serve these their gods, so that I too will not do the same, as which you should question? You should know what they did, and you should not follow in their footsteps. This is Dabarim words, should never have been called Deuteronomy 12:30. And I'm going to review it superficially because we'll return to it in our next program as the end of this one, and as an opportunity to recognize that God is opposed to religion. The thing that he did not want his people to do is to pay any heedance to the gods and the religiosity of the Gentiles. And yet that is what his people have become. They are more defined, Jews are more defined by religion than any other culture in the history of humanity. In fact, rabbis have made being Jewish and Judaism synonymous. And so God's people have done exactly the opposite of what God asked, integrating their ethnicity and their religiosity. The very thing here that God says do not do. And make no mistake, God is not trying to save everybody. He is not here trying to help Israelites when the majority of Israelites are either overtly political or overtly religious. Because what he says to his people is that you're going to be uprooted just as they will be. You're going to be cast away just as will be those who have shown an affinity for false gods. So if you want to receive the benefits of the relationship, these people who you need to disassociate with because they are deceiving about God, you should distance yourself from them. They're toxic. They're paralyzing. They will destroy your soul. So if your goal is to settle in the land, if your goal is to be part of those who enter the restoration of Eden and then into Shamayim, if that is your intent for your soul, then you need to be far more diligent than so many have been. You need to closely examine and to contemplate God's testimony in its entirety. You can't stoop to a chat box. You can't stoop to your claim to fame is your animosity for the one person that taught you everything you've known up to this point about God, just because you want to speak for a psychopath and make her feel good about herself. Think it through, folks. If you are out promoting any form of religiosity, like the Todah is the Jewish Messiah or the Christian Christ. What are you doing with your life? Why are you throwing it away? He says, if you do that, just as they have been, you'll be destroyed. You'll be exterminated. Your life will end. God's not going to say to you, we want to apologize. Maybe you need a pardon. Okay, what about some capricious forgiveness? I didn't really mean all of that about you dying if you didn't pay any heed to what I said. I'll be capricious. I'll be like the religious gods. I'll cut you some slack because, I've seen that, you tried once or twice. You have a good heart. You mean well. No, you don't. You're vicious. You don't mean well. You're just fooling yourselves. And God's not going to change. And he's not going to cut you any slack. And there will be no second chances. There will be no pardon. This is once and for all. You need to know God's criterion for you to move forward or to be pushed away and aside. And you're running out of time to figure it out. So I thank you for listening. Look forward to being part of your life in our next broadcast from the library studio. May God bless you all.